Hello again, students. How's it going? As always, it's Instructor Holland here with the VLP Network. Welcome back to class. I hope everyone is doing well. It's good to see you guys again. Today's period of instruction in class is going to be on something that hits very, very close to home and to my heart because I am a seasoned martial artist and have been training since I was 10 years old. This is a question that was brought up to me all the time, especially on social media. I kind of get asked this quite a bit on Facebook through private messaging and stuff like that, not only from students that I don't know from the YouTube channel and stuff like that, my subscribers, but also from students who I have taught before briefly while I was teaching over down at Pacific West Academy as an EP instructor, and other people that I may have met throughout my time as a martial arts instructor. Just students in general that want to continue their training but aren't quite sure what to look for when it comes to a martial arts studio and what is good to look for. Well, like I said, whenever somebody asks me that question, honestly, it does hit very close to home, and that's because martial arts is a gigantic breeding ground for a lot of BSers and a lot of cult-like personalities to peddle their bullshit and to teach things that are not effective that can potentially put people's lives in danger solely for the purpose of gaining massive profit. The very common term for these studios are McDojos, meaning that they focus on the quantity of students they have rather than the quality of instruction and technique that they are putting out. It hits very close to home for me because not only as a passionate martial artist who loves martial arts and wants to see them used and taught effectively, I also very deeply care about outing the BSers out there that take martial arts and dishonor them by saying that this martial art is effective when it's really not, and teaching people things that could potentially get students hurt. If a student comes to you asking you, hey, I want you to teach me how to protect myself, that is a very serious thing they're asking you. They are putting their lives in your hands, basically saying, I want to learn how to protect myself. I don't feel like I'm able to protect myself with the current skills I have. Sir, may you please teach me? And when you accept and you say, yes, I will gladly teach you, you're not just taking their money, you're taking that commitment and you are saying, yes, I will teach you how to defend yourself and I will show you my knowledge and I will pass on my knowledge to you, so that way if something ever happens to you, God forbid it ever does, the stuff I teach you will help you get out of this situation with your life and your family's lives intact. Unfortunately, people, like I said, use this as a way to gain profit or to stroke their own massive egos. But I get asked this all the time, and so I felt the need was there to create a video of my own explaining my top things you need to look for when you are looking for a martial arts school, because again, I've explained this before, a lot of the time when you are a brand new student and you're looking for a martial arts studio to train at, you are essentially akin to a teenager who has never bought a car before and has suddenly gone car shopping. You go to the car dealership, this slick talking businessman comes out, this slick talking car dealer comes out, and he sees that you are uneducated on this topic. He knows that you don't really know what to look for when it comes to a car, don't know the terminology, stuff like that, and he takes advantage of that in order to get a sale. Even if that sale in the end means that you're going to be stuck with a lemon or something that you're paying far out the ass for that you didn't need, all of these things he doesn't care about. What he cares about is making the sale, right? And that's what a lot of these BS masters do. And as a professional martial arts instructor who takes martial arts seriously, self-defense seriously, and the teaching of my students seriously, I refuse to do that, and I will call out anybody that I see that doesn't take this type of relationship between the student and instructor for self-defense as seriously. Now, it's worth noting that people get into martial arts for all different types of reasons. Self-defense is just one of those many reasons. If you're taking martial arts for fitness and for weight loss, well, this video isn't really geared towards you. I am focusing this video more on the individuals who want to learn a martial art for self-protection and purely self-protection. So with that being said, students, if you are somebody that's looking to join a martial arts school for self-defense and self-protection purposes, but you don't really know what to look for because you're either a beginner martial artist or have never taken martial arts in the first place, here are the things that I'm going to point out and some things that in my professional opinion you should watch out for first and foremost when researching a martial arts gym before you pay your dues and before you start training there, to ensure that you don't get roped into one of these snake oil, cult-like gyms that are there solely for profit or to stroke their own egos. So if you guys are ready, I'm ready. Let's have a seat and let class begin. Okay, students, so the way this is going to work is I'm actually going to go down through the list from things that I consider the least important to things that I consider the most important. And our very first topic that I'm considering one of the least important are the styles that are being offered at the particular gym that you're looking at. The reason that this isn't as important is because styles in particular don't necessarily constitute whether or not someone's going to be a good fighter. I know plenty of individuals who study traditional martial arts, study self-defense martial arts, but they themselves are good fighters still, and that's because they take the style that they were taught and they're smart enough to adapt it and use it for the purpose of their choosing. For example, in my last video regarding Krav Maga and how Krav Maga was controversial in my opinion, I mentioned UFC fighters and MMA fighters that were very, very popular and very famous that were traditional martial artists beforehand, Lyoto Machida being one of the examples that I made, who took things like karate or taekwondo but adapted them for the ring so that way they would be effective as styles that could be used for ring combat. So with that being said, in my personal opinion, style matters the least amount when you're looking at a gym. It doesn't really matter what style they're offering. However, there are styles out there that are complete and total BS and you absolutely have to watch out for them. A lot of these styles have to do with mystical BS, a lot of like the no-touch knockout type stuff. If you ever hear an instructor say that he's going to teach you how to manipulate chi energy so that way you can knock somebody out without ever having to touch them, or pressure point martial arts that are designed to, do the thing from Kill Bill, the 5-point palm exploding heart technique. All that stuff has been scientifically disproven, and it is total BS. One of the most common martial art masters that gets outed by this and gets his shit pushed in a lot by legitimate martial artists is George Dillman. He started off as an actual legit martial artist, and when it comes to pressure point stuff that he was teaching way, way back in the day, there actually was some validity to the stuff that he was teaching, but over time he let his ego and he let his own style get the better of him, and he ended up starting to train people how to knock people out with no touch chi energy waves, like this is Dragon Ball Z shooting a Kamehameha. And he actually ended up gathering a huge, huge following of people that saw this and immediately thought, oh, well, that's great. If I never have to put my hands on somebody, but I can knock them out, man, that's the easy way out. And that's the primary thing. If the martial art that is being offered at the gym that you're looking at says that you can knock somebody out with, your chi energy or your energy waves, no touch knockouts, pressure point knockouts, with as little effort as possible, it's bullshit. In the case of George Dillman, you can actually look it up. He actually got ousted on national television when a non-believer came to his gym and he had one of his students try and perform this chi manipulation on the guy's head, and the non-believer stood there and obviously didn't get knocked out.
In fact, when we did the test on Luigi, who was not ready to believe these things, or maybe was just staying there, seeing what would happen. It didn't work.
He came up with some BS excuses like, oh, well, the guy must have had his tongue in the wrong area, and because of that, you can nullify it.
Dillman thinks he knows what went wrong and has come up with a very interesting explanation.
The skeptic was a totally non-believer. Plus, I don't know if I should say that on film, but if the guy had his tongue in the wrong position of the mouth, that can also nullify it.
When in reality, he was just backpedaling, trying to defend his bullshit stuff that wasn't actually effective. Now, the reason that these guys have so many followers is because it ends up becoming a serious cult-like personality where these people who look at it see these mystical, magical things, and they actually end up getting brainwashed and believing that the stuff that is being taught is actually effective.
After seeing so many demonstrations, so many different techniques, so many different moves, you can't help but start believing.
They're opening up another door in your mind. It's just unbelievable.
Don't fall for it. If you see somebody using chi energy or pressure point manipulations and stuff like that, it's all complete BS. Don't believe it. Another thing I would heavily look out for is styles that aren't really known in the mainstream. If you see a style that has some sort of really strange name and you read the name and you go, huh, I've never heard of that, then more than likely it's BS. Quan Kun Ryu Dao, that's the style that I teach. That's probably BS. And that's because the martial arts that are the most effective have gotten their names out there because of just how effective they are. As a matter of fact, I could probably name off some martial art styles, and even if you're a non-martial artist, you have more than likely heard about it. Jiu-Jitsu, Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, Judo, Taekwondo, Muay Thai, boxing, Greco-Roman wrestling, freestyle wrestling, folk style wrestling, Shotokan and Kyokushin karate, Sambo. How many of those martial arts did you know right off the top of your head, even if you've never even trained? Probably almost all of them, and that's because those martial arts have a solid foundation in competition because they've proved themselves under pressure testing in the ring. If you go to a martial arts master and he goes, I study and I teach an ancient martial arts style that has been passed down through generations. It is called Shintun Ryu Dao. Or something. Like, they just make up some stuff. I just made that up. More than likely, it's bullshit, and you should be very, very skeptical. Lastly, I want to hit on some traditional styles very, very briefly. Traditional martial arts are by no means ineffective. They're oftentimes only ineffective because the instructors that are teaching them don't gear them towards actual fighting because they're teaching them in a traditional sense. Things like very traditional Taekwondo, very traditional karate, Kempo, Wing Chun Kung Fu. A lot of the time these things are based on theory and based on what they've been taught, what the instructors have been taught. I was taught that this would work. Have you ever used it? No, I haven't, but I know it would work because my instructor said it would work. I mean, Wing Chun's been around for thousands of years. It must work. While traditional martial arts can absolutely work as long as they're adapted to the ring and they're adapted for actual fighting, a lot of the time they're taught by these instructors who have never been in a fight in their life, or if they've been in fights, they've only fought people who have no idea what the hell they're doing, unskilled people or unskilled or very low-skilled martial artists. And because of that, they think that their martial art is geared towards actual fighting, when in reality it isn't. If you're gonna do a traditional martial art for self-defense, make sure that you find an instructor that has pressure tested his system or has some sort of background in other martial arts that are geared for combat sports, something like MMA, boxing, Muay Thai, stuff like that. You don't want to just go and find a guy who's trained only Taekwondo his entire life, because more than likely that instructor has a very closed mind, and you never want to be taught by somebody who is closed-minded. Okay guys, so instructor information, what does that mean? Well, when you are looking up a martial arts studio, a lot of the time if you ever go to their website or if you even go to their studio in general, more than likely legitimate studios that have accredited instructors or individuals who are highly certified or have fight records, etc., will have all of that information posted on either their website under their instructor bios and information, or as diplomas and stuff like that inside the instructors' offices. Most legitimate instructors will be completely open and honest about their fight record, what they've done, who they've earned their black belt certifications and instructor certifications from, their lineage, from the family tree, revolving around who their instructors were, etc. But the instructors out there that are bullshit artists will oftentimes not have any of that. So this is what you need to look out for. Whenever you are looking up an instructor's bio, take a look at all the different things that they list. If an instructor's accolades seem absolutely ridiculous, then you should be skeptical. Now that doesn't necessarily mean that they are fibbing or they're lying about it, but I highly recommend you do your own research and Google them to make sure what they're saying is actually true. Some of the most obvious faker martial artists out there that pose as instructors and charge a lot of money for the stuff that they're passing off as actual self-defense information, when you look at their instructor bios, they have a list that is a mile long of all sorts of crazy stuff that just doesn't make any sense. Almost always, a lot of this stuff actually has to do with the ranks in different martial arts systems that they have. 10th degree black belt in this, 11th degree black belt in this, 20th degree black belt in this, full instructor in this. If someone says that they have like 6 10th degree black belts, more than likely they're full of shit. A 10th degree black belt is regularly stated as the highest rank that someone can get in a martial art. There is no martial art really that has a rank system that goes beyond a 10th degree black belt, with the exception of ninjutsu, and ninjutsu itself is bullshit. But oftentimes if somebody earns, let's say, a 10th degree black belt in Kempo karate, that takes them 50, 60 years. They have to have been an instructor and a student for pretty much their entire life, and a lot of the time the guys that have these ranks are well into old age. So it's almost pretty much impossible for somebody to have multiple 10th degree black belts unless they were awarded to them just from an affiliation standpoint, or as an honorable, mention type of standpoint. But oftentimes, guys, it's complete BS. Don't believe that this guy has multiple 10th degree black belts or even multiple 5th, 6th, 7th master degree black belts. Another common thing to look out for is fight records. If somebody says that he went 200-0 in full contact fighting, that's bullshit too. This can all easily be found out. You can Google somebody's name, look up their fight record, and if they're bullshitting, you won't find anything on their fight record online. If anyone says they've ever fought MMA, Google their name, put MMA next to their name, and then see if they were actually telling the truth. And a lot of the time, these guys that say that they have 200 plus fights, 100 plus fights, I was 100-0 in full contact kumite in a secret underground fighting championship that took place over in Singapore, which no one talks about, by the way, because it's very hush-hush. It's invite only. They are complete, total liars, and they need to get told to their face that they're liars. Probably one of the most famous martial art frauds that did this was a guy named Frank Dux. If you've ever seen the movie Bloodsport, the movie Bloodsport was modeled after the whole story that he told people and the book that he wrote and stuff like that about how he earned the fastest knockout by kick, the fastest knockout by punch, etc., in this secret underground kumite where it was no holds barred and it was to the death and all sorts of crazy dumb shit like that. Don't believe it for a second. The moment you see anything like that, turn tail and get the hell out. It's a bullshit gym. Instructor skill means how the instructors move when they are actually competing, when they are sparring, when they are flowing with their students, when they're demonstrating techniques. And it also means how well they teach the technique in terms of whether or not they are actually teaching it correctly. Now, obviously, this is very difficult for beginner individuals to understand because they don't really know what it looks like to see a legitimate martial artist move, or they don't really know the techniques at all, or they don't know the techniques at all. And so trying to spot when somebody is teaching something incorrectly is pretty much impossible, if not difficult to do. But all of these BS martial art masters out there, all of these fakers, all of these frauds, these snake oil salesmen, what they will do is they will demonstrate a technique, and seasoned martial artists who actually have skill and busted their asses for the skills that they have, or people who have competed, will look at it and go, oh my God, what the hell did I just watch? Or they'll watch the master or the instructor teach something and go, you are teaching this incorrectly, and the reason you're teaching incorrectly is for this reason, this reason, this reason, and this reason. All of these things you just did would get this person killed. So while it might be difficult for a beginner or a new student to spot these things or to look at these things, what I would recommend that you do is, if you don't have anybody that are friends or family members that are martial artists, take a look at videos on YouTube. There's plenty of videos on YouTube or on social media of legitimate fighters, legitimate martial artists actually moving, sparring, rolling, and competing with each other, or even hitting the heavy bag, shadow boxing, things like that, and see how legitimate martial artists and fighters move when they're actually just kind of free-flowing. Take that and then compare it to somebody who is teaching at the gym that you're looking at, and compare and contrast and see whether or not this person's skill is the skill of an actual master or instructor. I guess you could say the way that they move is the way that they move befitting a person who has the title of master. My other recommendation would be, if you don't do that, if you have friends, if you have family members, if you have, distant relatives or whoever that are skilled martial artists, take a video of the instructor teaching something, take a video of the instructor moving, make sure that you do it respectfully. Don't just whip out your phone in the middle of class, that's disrespectful. But if you get permission and stuff like that, take a video of them moving, or if they have stuff up on a YouTube channel, if they have video of them on their Facebook, or if they have video up on their website or whatever, take those videos and take those images of them doing and teaching things, send it to the people that are skilled martial artists, and they can oftentimes go, either that's bullshit or that's legit. Also keep in mind that if you pull out a phone and you go, hey man, I want to record this, and the instructor goes, no, absolutely not, something is fishy about that. It's not unusual for a martial arts instructor to be like, okay, well, you can record it, but I want to make sure that you only record once or twice every class. They also oftentimes don't want you distributing the stuff that they're teaching for nonprofit because, again, this is part of their business. They're trying to make money, which is, again, understandable. But more often than not, a legitimate martial artist, when you ask, hey, do you mind if I record this one specific technique, will oftentimes go, yeah, bro, I don't care. So again, take a look at how the instructor moves and teaches techniques, and then compare and contrast it to how legitimate professionals that you know are verified move and teach. And if something looks off, more than likely, it is off. One thing I always told my students was that if you are ever unsure about a martial arts gym, send me the link to their website, send me videos of the instructor teaching something, or moving, or sparring, or doing whatever, or demonstrating a technique. Send it to me and I'll be more than happy to tell you whether or not this guy is legit or not. If you have friends or family members that are legit martial artists, do that as well. So let's say you guys find a martial arts gym and you decide to go in and take one of their free trial classes. Sometimes they offer free trial weeks or whatever. And you're in class and you're watching the instructor teach a technique or whatever, and he starts saying large vocabulary words, or he starts using terminology that just seems completely weird and crazy and seems like it's just out of touch. More than likely that's because he doesn't know what the hell he's talking about, and he's just trying to use overly complicated terminology and verbiage to make it seem like he's educated on certain subjects in order to create a false sense of knowledge. He's trying to brainwash you and manipulate you into thinking that this guy knows stuff that you don't. What do I mean by this? Let me give you some examples. So let's say you're in class and he's teaching you how to get out of a specific hold or defend against some sort of attack or something like that. And he says something like, so what you're gonna have to do in order to get out of this hold is you're gonna have to strike right here. This particular point right here is called the liver 7 point. The liver 7 point physiologically interconnects with your 17th chakra down here. What this does is this is going to cause cardiac arrhythmia, because if we take a look at the longitudinal wave patterns of the body as cited in ancient Chinese acupuncture, when these longitudinal wave patterns are interrupted, what ends up happening inside of our body is a thing called kinesic instability. Kinesic instability is when your body is unable to deal with the kinetic pressure delivered by that singular point. This is going to cause complete neuromuscular incapacitation, therefore leading to cardiac arrhythmia, eventually cardiac arrest, which long-term leads to brain death. My God, you guys have just no idea how long it took for me to record that, how many takes it took. It's such bullshit that I couldn't stop laughing. I couldn't stop stumbling over my words. It's just absolutely ridiculous. The reason that these bullshit martial artists do this is so that way they can create a false sense of knowledge around the student. The student hears these things, and through their own ignorance or innocence, they're unable to really understand what the instructor is talking about. But that's okay, because the instructor definitely sounds like he knows what he's talking about. And because the instructor sounds like he knows what he's talking about, it therefore must be true. A lot of cult-like organizations, a lot of brainwashing and grooming type of organization utilize this type of method in order to make their members brainwashed, because they really seem like they know what they're talking about, and their members are just too stupid to be able to differentiate when someone is just spewing out verbiage and vocabulary in order to manipulate them and make them seem smart. But don't believe it for a second. If something like that ends up coming out, if I were you, I would actually challenge the instructor at that point and ask him, well, what does all that mean exactly? Then do your own research. Google's your best friend. Go and Google it and see if the stuff that he's preaching or the stuff that he's spewing out of his mouth actually makes sense. And if it doesn't, you know you have a BS martial artist on your hands. Anytime you hear this type of vocabulary and this type of verbiage, be automatically, immediately skeptical about what the guy is talking about. Now, a lot of traditional martial arts gyms have certain rules and traditions that could be considered cult-like, but in all actuality are just that, just traditions. Things like bowing before you get on the mat, lining up into formation, bowing to the instructor, bowing to the black belts, etc., calling the instructor sir or master, things like that. All of these things are relatively normal in traditional martial arts. You don't see a whole lot of that in combat sport gyms, actually. Combat sport gyms tend to be much more laid back. As a matter of fact, at the 3 combat sports gyms that I have competed at so far, only one of the combat sports gyms had a bit of a tradition where you called the instructor sensei. That gym was specifically highest in MMA Academy down in LA when I was training under Coach Gokor Javician. He had a little bit of a rule where we would call the instructors sensei and stuff like that, which was totally fine with me. At the very first gym I trained at, Team Strike Zone out of Norwich, Connecticut, we had nothing like that. It was never sensei, it was never anything. My head coach could say, hey, you can call me Daryl. I called him coach out of pure respect. As a matter of fact, that's what I usually tend to do. I usually call my coaches coach or sensei or something like that, just out of pure respect, because they are better than me, they have more knowledge than me, and they're passing their knowledge of their own free will onto me. They are my mentors, they are my guides, and so because of that, I like to treat them with the respect that they deserve. Traditional martial art gyms have this as well, and it's also very good for establishing and developing discipline in not only children, but some adults that need it. But the moment that you have martial art gyms or a martial art gym that takes this to a completely different level, you gotta really watch out, because a lot of these gyms become very cult-like. A rule that is a big red flag to watch out for is to never question your instructors. At least at the MMA gyms that I've trained and competed at, it's never a bad thing to question your instructor. You obviously do it in a respectful way. Hey coach, so how would that work exactly? The coach, if he's legit, is more than happy to explain to you because he knows how his techniques work, he knows that they're legit, and he has no problem showing you exactly why they work. But if you are told that's disrespectful, don't ever question your instructors and don't ask why things work. Just take everything that we give you and understand that it works and accept it, and that's it. Get out. Get out right now. Forget martial arts for a second. No free-thinking or logical individual who takes that approach to life at all is a mature individual. You should avoid those types of people like the plague, regardless of whether or not it's in a martial arts gym. The sensei of the gym is not the be-all, end-all of martial arts knowledge, and he should not be telling you to treat him that way. There should always be an option for students to have an open dialogue with their instructors so that way they can feel confident that their instructors can articulate why the stuff they're teaching is effective. After all, don't you want the product that you're paying for to be legit? These cult-like rules have even gone so far sometimes as to make it so that way like female students of the gym have had to do sexual things with their head instructor because he's the master and we have to respect him, and by respecting him we have to give him what he wants because that's what the master deserves. Things like that. You think I'm joking, I'm really not. The iceberg of cult-like martial art groups is huge, and if you delve deep into it, you'll find some really messed up stuff. Trust me, in some ways, it is very much just as bad as cult-like religious groups. It is never a bad thing to treat your instructor with respect. It is never a bad thing for your instructor to request respect. But the moment they demand it and the moment they make hard set rule sets about how you're supposed to treat them and how you are supposed to be subservient to them, that's a problem, and you need to watch out. Just keep this in mind whenever you're searching for a gym. This is something I heavily harped on in my Why Krav Maga is Flawed video previously, and I'm going to harp on it again because honestly it's one of the biggest tells of whether or not a school is a McDojo or not. Any good martial artist worth his salt should be able to execute the techniques that he teaches more than half of the time on an opponent who is fully resisting. After all, if you're trying to learn techniques for self-defense, don't you want them to work most of the time, or do you want them to work only a little bit of the time? The gym that you are training at should give you plenty of opportunities to try the techniques that you have learned on individuals who are fully resisting. That means that if the gym that you're training at does not do any sort of sparring, does not do any sort of live grappling or live training at all in general, I would highly suggest you leave that gym. Again, I'm talking purely about self-defense here. If you're joining martial arts because you want to learn the artistic side of it, if you want to learn the spiritual side of it, if you want to get into shape, and fighting is not your priority, this is something that you could bypass. I don't want to fight, I don't want to spar. Okay, that's totally fine. But if you're learning self-defense and your goal of joining a martial arts team is to learn how to fight and defend yourself should somebody come and attack you, the raw reality is that you're going to have to deal with individuals who are fighting back against you in training, because if you don't, you are wholeheartedly misprepared for a situation that could occur in real life. Take a look at the gym's schedule. If they never ever have any live sparring, live grappling, live anything, don't go to the gym. You'll often hear martial art masters and instructors or owners of the gyms try and give reasons why they don't live spar. I never listen. I never listen to their reasons. I immediately walk out of the gym. I don't want to know why you don't do live sparring, why you don't do live grappling. I'm willing to bet the reason that you don't want your students trying these things out on people who are actually resisting is because more than half the time, the stuff does not work. There are martial arts that are pressure tested, and then there are martial arts that are theory-based. Theory-based martial arts are exactly that. They come up with a theory. Oh, well, it should work because of these reasons. But that's like trying to take a scientific hypothesis, never ever testing it to see if it fails, and then just passing it as fact. It is absolutely wrong, and it is a dangerous teaching practice because you are mispreparing your students for what may occur to them outside in real life. Real fighting and real combat is savage, scary, and it is not fun. Your students need to know what it's like to get pressured. They need to know what it's like to get punched in the face. They need to know what it's like to feel pain. They need to know what it's like to feel scared. They need to know what it's like to feel apprehensive. All of these things are things that you face in live training. And through live training and through continuously pushing yourself, you will end up getting better. There's an excellent story that I saw on YouTube just the other day, actually, from a channel called Martial martial arts journey, I highly recommend you guys check out his channel because he is a perfect example of this type of individual. He is a first degree black belt in Aikido. Actually, I might be wrong on that. I think he's a multiple degree black belt in Aikido, and he was an Aikido practitioner and instructor for a long, long time. But he had a friend that came over and was learning jiu-jitsu, and he wanted to try out jiu-jitsu. And so he went and he tried jiu-jitsu on this practitioner who was not a very good jiu-jitsu player. He tried using Aikido and his Aikido did not work. And he ended up sitting there and going, why? Instead of getting defensive and going, oh, my Aikido would have worked in a real fight. You know, it didn't work because it's jiu-jitsu, blah, blah, blah. Instead of doing anything like that, he actually sat there and going, why didn't my Aikido work? He went to a bunch of other MMA gyms and he ended up actually posting videos of himself. Go to his channel, look at his videos. He actually posted videos of himself sparring and rolling with MMA fighters, professional and amateur MMA fighters, and getting dominated by them. And he came to the conclusion that the reason that his Aikido didn't work was because in Aikido, almost all the time, as a matter of fact, in his own words, pretty much his entire martial arts and Aikido career, people move for you. When you go and when you do these techniques, they stand still. They allow themselves to get manipulated. And that is not realistic training. So when he went with someone who not only knew a little bit of martial arts, but was full-blown resisting, his training was not up to par because he had never trained for that. And so he ended up getting his ass kicked. It's for that reason that even though you might be uncomfortable sparring and rolling, it absolutely has to happen because the reality is that a real self-defense situation is not comfortable anyway. You're going to have to put yourself out of your comfort zone if you want to learn how to properly fight and protect yourself and your family. And because of that, always go to a gym that allows live sparring and live grappling. Any MMA gym, any good jiu-jitsu gym, anything like that, any of the combat sports gyms, as a matter of fact, do these things pretty much every day. Every jiu-jitsu class I've ever gone to, with the exception of just a few days where everyone was sore and tired because it's later on in the week, in order to avoid injury, the instructor didn't want to do any live grappling. 99.9% of the time in any boxing, jiu-jitsu, whatever class that I've gone to, the instructor has gone, okay guys, let's do 3 5-minute rounds at the end of class. And you have, 15 minutes of live sparring, live grappling going on at the end of class, every single class, so that way you can get used to this pressure and you can get used to this live technique. So, new students, if you're looking at a martial arts gym and you're trying to train in martial arts for the purpose of self-defense, make sure on the gym schedule, which is most of the time available on their website, you see that they have live sparring and live grappling days. Or go into the gym and ask the head coach or ask the instructors in general, hey, do we do any live sparring or live grappling? If they say no, not really, get the hell out of the gym. It's not worth your time because it's not going to properly prepare you. If you join a martial arts gym and the instructor looks like he couldn't pedal his bike down to McDonald's without having a complete heart attack, more than likely you're getting gypped. Now, to be perfectly fair, there are reasons why a martial arts instructor, especially in older age, would not be in fighting shape anymore, and that's because, well, injuries, right? For example, my old instructor, Coach Daryl Marcarelli, he had so many fights under his belt and so many years of wrestling and just so much stuff that he had put his body through that he had bone spurs starting to go through his spinal cord and everything. He had severe neck issues. His doctor actually told him that if he had gotten his neck or his head hit in a specific way, then he would become a quadriplegic. And so because of that, he couldn't roll, he couldn't wrestle with the students anymore, even though to our fear a lot of the time he actually would anyway. And a lot of the time we'd sit there and go, Coach, whoa, you don't have to do this. But him being an old fighter, he couldn't help but get back on the mat. So if the instructor has injuries and stuff like that, then that's one understandable thing that may stop somebody from still being in fighting shape. But trust me guys, any legitimate gym that I've ever been to anyway, and I've been to several, all of the combat sports coaches that I've had in those gyms were always still in fighting shape. That means that if they went out and they got into a confrontation and somebody decided to attack them on the street at that moment, they were absolutely fit enough to keep themselves from gassing out in the middle of a confrontation. This is not the case with a lot of BS martial artists and fakers that are out there. It's also unfortunately a common thing that you see with a lot of traditional martial art masters and stuff like that. They let themselves go because for whatever reason they feel like they don't need to train anymore. It's a big red flag when someone who was instructing you in the ways of physical combat, they themselves are not physically prepared for combat. I was always told that a good leader knows the way, goes the way, and shows the way. And goes the way meaning that this guy still practices what he preaches. So if you end up going to the gym and you see this instructor who looks like all he ever does is eat out at the Chinese buffet every single night for dinner, and while he's like even demonstrating techniques, not using a whole lot of effort in general at all, he's wheezing like Bob Pobo from F is for Family.
Oh, for Christ's sake! This bucket's only got 3 biscuits!
That's a big red flag, and you should really look into whether or not this guy is like this because he has injuries from competition or injuries from his martial arts journey in life, or if he's just a lazy piece of garbage that for whatever reason thinks that he doesn't need to keep himself up to par with the students that he's training. Now, when I say dangerous training methods, I'm not talking about just martial arts, because martial arts in and of themselves, whether you like it or not, is inherently slightly dangerous. That's like going to the weight room and saying, I don't want to sign the waiver because I don't want to be put in any danger. Well, when you're lifting heavy objects against the force of gravity, there are always chances of something bad happening. The same is true for any martial arts gym. No, what I mean by dangerous training practices is techniques or methods of training the students that the instructor uses that he says work for a specific purpose, but in all actuality only really cause injury. A little while ago, there was this really famous video going around of this boxing coach, and I'm not sure where, maybe it was Brazil or something like that, where he lined up his boxers, he lined up his students, he put 16-ounce gloves, and he went over and he just started punching them in the face. And he was punching them pretty hard. Now, he was claiming that when he was doing this, it was to toughen his students' chins, so that way when they got into the ring, they'd be used to getting punched in the face. The issue with that is that you are not toughening anything up by having your students' brains rattle around in their head, causing concussions, micro concussions and bigger concussions at all. One of the biggest things my old boxing coach, Jody Shealy, actually told me was, Holland, don't leave the fight in the gym. Meaning, when you are sparring and stuff like that, don't spar with your partner so hard that you're punch drunk already in the gym, and then when you go to fight, you're already all messed up. If your instructor asks you to do anything ridiculous, like iron jaw training, like punching someone in the face that they're gonna have you do, then get out immediately, because that instructor has absolutely no idea what the hell he's doing, and he's putting your life and your physical body in danger. God forbid something like that actually happens and you do get an injury, and next thing you know, you can't train for an extended period of time, or God forbid it's a permanent injury and you can't train ever again in your life. Now hold up, I can hear all of the, BS artists talking right now, but aren't sparring and live grappling, aren't those dangerous? Yeah, they are. But you want to know how many times I spar and grapple a week and I'm perfectly fine? Do you know how many BJJ students grapple and spar every single day? All across the world, multiple times a day, and they get out just fine. Live sparring, live grappling are not necessarily fights. You are not going 100% absolutely trying to kill each other. But the coach should always be there to safely monitor his students and make sure that no dangerous training practices occur. If the coach tells you to perform something that is inherently dangerous and does not seem like it has any sort of benefit at all, and he tries to give you some BS excuse of why this should be done to make you a better fighter, quit. Get out. It isn't worth it. And the last thing you want is to be injured either for a short period of time, a long period of time, or permanently, and that way you can never train ever again or never do anything else ever again. Forget martial arts. Think about if you have children, you want to be able to play with your children. If you have grandkids, you want to be able to play with your grandkids, etc. You want to have an active lifestyle. You don't want to be confined to a wheelchair or have a limp or chronic pain for the rest of your life. Don't abide by unsafe training practices. Okay guys, so what I want to do now in order to finish this video off is to do something that's going to be a little bit funny, but at the same time is going to be educational for you guys to see what it's actually like when you see a bullshit artist at work. I'm going to put up 3 videos of martial art masters, quote unquote, that claim that they are self-defense experts or martial art masters, whatever. And I'm going to show you exactly what the video shows, and then I'm going to tell you afterwards just the sort of things that I talked about that are red flags that people should have picked up when they saw the video. So let's take a look.
Bring it back. Again, pull your weight towards him. And then from there, you got strike here, strike to the ribs. You get from here, strike here, strike the neck, that kind of stuff. All right? So one more time, full force. Ready? Go. Ready? Yeah. So you are here, that position, one more time. Again.
Okay guys, so what did we see? Well, let's go down the list of points that I previously mentioned, tick them off one by one, and see how they apply to the instructor in this video. So first and foremost, obviously, the dude is horrendously out of shape, right? He doesn't look like he does any sort of physical activity whatsoever. He doesn't look like he trains at all on his spare time. He doesn't look like he practices what he preaches, correct? Secondly, you can tell from one of the previous points I made being, what does the instructor show techniques properly? How does the instructor move? And is the instructor teaching techniques properly as well? He absolutely doesn't, okay? The guy that he's using as a partner, as a matter of fact, probably has way more training than him, because as you can see, the kid in the pink shirt or red shirt, whatever it was, when he shoots in like a wrestler, and that is an actual wrestling shot, as a matter of fact. You can tell from the way he drags his knee on the ground, the way he duck walks and stuff like that, the way he grabs onto the legs, and then the way that he rolls the guy to the side when he takes him down, so he ends up in side control as opposed to ending up in guard. Kid obviously has some either wrestling or BJJ background. And the instructor teaches the defense for this type of attack completely wrong, okay? He doesn't whizzer, he doesn't try and underhook, he doesn't head pressure, he doesn't sprawl, he just stands there and does what a lot of self-defense BS artists teach, which is when he comes in, the back of his head is exposed, so all you have to do is slam the back of his head, and that's definitely going to take him down. No, it doesn't work like that. And obviously you can tell from the moment he told the guy, hey, go 100%, the student shot in, took him down, because the dude obviously doesn't train with somebody who's ever gone 100% on him. And that leads into the next point that we previously mentioned, pressure testing, right? If the instructor doesn't have any sort of pressure testing in his studio or in his training, then probably he doesn't know what he's talking about. I'm willing to bet that instructor right there was super surprised the moment that wrestler shot in and took him down, because he probably had a thought like, oh my God, why didn't this work? And now he's embarrassed because in front of his entire class, he just got dropped on his ass. Not only that, but he ended up in a horrendous position. The wrestler ends up getting him in side control. If it were a street fight, not only could the wrestler have taken him and spiked him into the concrete and ended him, but he ends up in side control and can ground and pound all day. It really doesn't take any skill to ground and pound. So those three things right there, out of shape instructor, teaching things absolutely incorrectly, teaching the defense for that shot and that double leg takedown incorrectly, and at the same time, more than likely not pressure testing his own material. All right, let's move on to the second video.
A gun disarm works off biomechanics. When the brain sees me move, he pulls the trigger. That's 0.02 of a second. When his brain tells me to pull the trigger, that's 0.02 of a second. It only takes me 1,000 of a second for me to move what's in front of the gun. Therefore, the bullet's always going to pass by. Pulls the trigger. I grab the weapon, control the barrel, fingers in his eyes, peel him down, secure the weapon, controlling the weapon, maintaining muzzle control.
Oh my God. Okay, so let's go down the list again. Once again, out of shape instructor. This dude doesn't seem as out of shape as the previous guy, but he's definitely a little bit portly. Next, did you hear all the cool terminology that I talked about before that you should watch out for? The verbiage and vocabulary? Oh, biomechanics, the biomechanics of the hand. Plus whatever, you know, super flashy vocabulary that he inputted into there to make himself sound like he knew what he was talking about. Then you have the instructor totally teaching things incorrectly. First and foremost, none of the gun defenses that he showed would ever actually work. I know for people that are not versed in martial arts, you look at that and it seems at least a little bit legitimate, but I'm telling you right now, that stuff will get you killed. Especially the rifle one. He grabs onto the rifle and then he ends up going over and grabbing onto the dude's like eyes, and for some reason this person's unable to back up or pull the gun out of his hands and repoint it at him. For some reason the dude is, you know, not fighting back. And that leads into yet another point, right? Unresisting opponents, just like I was talking about in the previous video. What makes you think that a person who's holding the gun to your head is just going to stand there and allow you to do it? Once again, I'm willing to bet this guy has never had anybody actually try and fight back on something like this. This video also brings up something that I didn't mention before, but also watch out for like the stuff that these people are wearing. If you see them wearing like camouflage utility pants that they got off like the Army Navy store website or something like that, a lot of the time that's also BS. It's peacocking. They're trying to make themselves look like they're professional, and this guy does that very same thing. You can see he's decked out in this like tactical gear to make himself look really cool. Black tactical vest. He's got his arm patches and stuff like that. In the background, he has this entire I'm sorry. In the background, he has this entire wall, this like tool wall that is just full of guns, but they're all airsoft guns. If you can tell, they all have red tips. He's got an entire background of airsoft guns to make it seem like his academy is like the most tactical fucking place ever. Oh my God, it's ridiculous. The moment you see this video, it has so many red flags. You should avoid anything this guy teaches you. All right, guys, I don't know if I can handle one more video, but let's move on to one more.
Oh. Did he start snoring then? Yeah. Look at his colour.
Oh my God, you want to piss me off? Show me this type of stuff. All right, let's go down the list again. Holy crap, for the third time in a row, out of shape instructor. It's pretty much becoming just a meme at this point. I mean, why would you ever have to work out if just waving your hand in front of somebody's face and then forearming somebody's tricep could just instantaneously knock somebody out, right? In all seriousness though, the reason I included this clip, guys, is because I wanted you to see just what the cult-like personality is in martial arts like this. You can tell from the moment that he strikes the dude in the tricep or shoulder, wherever the hell he hit him, the dude who pretends to get knocked out is acting his ass off. It's so flamboyant and so ridiculous that it's obviously fake. But I'm willing to bet, and I'm telling you right now, that that student legitimately believes all of the bullshit that his master told him. And that's what these people do. They take individuals who are young, they take individuals who don't know anything, who are ignorant, who are innocent, and they brainwash them into thinking that these powers, these mystical abilities, are actually real. And because they program them and because they groom them so much, that these people end up actually believing it, and it creates a cycle, because now that person's gonna get people who are young and impressionable and take them and show them stuff. And they always demonstrate on their own people. They never demonstrate on outsiders, because if you ever did that, you end up like George Dillon, who got outed on national television. And we can't have that, because that would take away from the school, that would take away from the funds that I make off of these people, and worst of all, it would totally destroy my ego. But I digress. So once again, we have a fat instructor who's totally out of shape, looks like he eats Wendy's every single night, and then we have a complete bullshit technique. This block and stuff like that, if you notice, the guy who throws the punch keeps his arm out there the entire time that the master is doing whatever the hell he's doing, because that's how people fight. Whenever I'm boxing somebody, I always throw a right hand and I leave my right hand out, so that way they have the opportunity to slip and uppercut me or slip and right hand me too, because that's just the way people fight, right? And then where he hits him, like when you notice, he blocks the arm, he comes over and then he forearms the guy after doing this weird like witchy, you know, wave thing in front of his face. He hits the guy in what, the tricep, the shoulder? How would that knock somebody out? And then you'll always, whenever you see clips of these no-touch energy or pressure point knockout masters, you always see them do the same exact thing whenever their student goes and flops to the floor. They always run behind, they always act super like, you know, worried. Okay, get him up, and they sit him up, they place him in what's called the recovery position, and then they lock, you know, they lock his legs, interlock his legs together, smack him on the back of the neck, boom, boom, okay, he's good, and then the guy suddenly wakes up. I mean, look, it's obviously acted, my God. I don't know if you guys can notice in the background too, but remember how I mentioned about martial arts that have names that are pretty much unknown? Well, on the flag in this guy's gym, it looks like a one-car garage, but in the flag in this guy's gym, he has Zendoryu, whatever the hell. That's what's on his flag, and apparently that's the name of the martial arts style. Have any of you ever fucking heard of a Zendoryu in the UFC or in any sort of actual fighting championship where skills are displayed for thousands of people in the crowd to see? No, probably not. So all of those things can be taken away from these clips, guys, but ultimately that's the number one thing that I wanted you to watch and see for yourself, just how BS these people are. If you see even a smidgen of that, or you catch whiff of anything like that in the gym that you are looking at, get out right away. So students, in conclusion of today's class, first and foremost, I'd really like to point out 2 YouTube channels that I highly recommend you guys watch if you really want to delve deep into how big the iceberg of bullshit martial arts is. The first channel I'd like to point out is actually where I got those clips from. You can see their little logo down in the bottom right-hand corner. As a matter of fact, it's only one guy. The name of the YouTube channel is McDojo Life. I highly recommend you go to his channel. He's a former fighter as well as a lifelong martial artist like myself, and he has pretty much dedicated his life and his channel to creating videos where he does nothing but out martial art fakers. If you have the time, go check him out. He's an awesome YouTube channel. He's also doing the Lord's work by finding these guys and totally showing how their stuff is BS, which it should be done because this stuff is dangerous to teach people. The second channel that I would like to point out is a channel called Fight Commentary Breakdowns. It's also run by a gentleman who is a lifelong martial artist, and he's a big fan of combat sports. And the reason I would like you to check out his channel is because he does a lot of commentary on fights that aren't really prevalent here in the US because the bullshit artists know they would get absolutely destroyed. But a lot of the weird matchups that happen over in China, where traditional martial arts is legitimately part of their culture and they view MMA almost like a bash to their culture. The fights that he looks at are these fights that occur between traditional martial artists and then the combat sports guys. So you have guys who are doing like white crane kung fu and all sorts of crazy stuff, challenging guys who are boxers or kickboxers or Sanda fighters or whatever. And 99.9% of the time what ends up happening is exactly what you think. Those traditional martial artists get completely annihilated. He posts those videos all the time, and it's great because he's showing exactly what the effective martial arts are right there in front of your face, and you can see based on the full contact fight what is effective and what isn't. And because of that, in my opinion, he's also doing the Lord's work because he's showing exactly what's effective and what's not, and that's very important. So McDojo Life and Fight Commentary Breakdowns, go check those guys out. I'm a big fan of them. So ultimately, in conclusion, what are we talking about here? The whole point of this class was not to bash any particular instructor or anything like that, except for the ones that are selling and peddling BS, but primarily what it was is to help brand new students or students that don't know what they're getting themselves into but want to train martial arts, again, purely for self-defense. I made this as sort of a guide for those types of individuals to find a gym and the things that they need to look out for before joining a gym and spending their hard-earned money so they can go and learn something that is ineffective. I hope this helps you if you are an individual that is thinking about training in martial arts for self-defense and are on the fence about a specific gym. Take what I say, take a look at the stuff that the instructors there are offering, and then make a decision of your own. Whatever you do though, always be critical of everybody. I always told my students, be critical of everybody, including myself. You know, I would have them say, look, if you don't believe what I'm saying, I'd be more than happy to pressure test it with you, or I can contact a bunch of my instructors, a bunch of my former fighters who were teammates of mine on the previous teams that I competed for, and we can talk about it. Because in the end, I always wanted my students to feel like what they were getting was the legit stuff that's going to actually help them if something ends up happening to them. So students, class is dismissed for today. I hope you enjoyed the class. I hope you found it informative and educational. I hope it helps you in your future endeavors. As always, victory loves preparation, so stay safe and stay prepared. Keep training. Have a good one, guys.